Welcome back to my channel for a Hasselblad X2D II autofocus tutorial. And that is a video a lot of people have asked for. So I will provide in this video for you a full download of all the functions, features you need to know if you want to operate the by now splendid autofocus system in the Hasselblad X2D II in an effective and efficient way. And of course, I will also show you sample images I was shooting with Autofocus Continuous and Autofocus Tracking, my photo model Stephanie. And also here we'll see what the results are. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. Many thanks for that. All right, so what do we have here? This is my Hasselblad X2D II mounted on the camera body. Currently is an absolutely brilliant prime lens, namely the XCD 55mm. And I will use this lens on the camera body to illustrate, live demonstrate to you all the functions and features you need to understand for effectively and efficiently operating the super improved autofocus system in the Hasselblad X2D II compared to the Hasselblad X2D. Because a lot of things which work now in the Hasselblad X2D II are not there on the Hasselblad X2D, the predecessor of this beautiful camera. I also have Jennifer here with me. I will use Jennifer and her female warrior friend here to demonstrate certain functions to you. But then, of course, I will also show you real-life sample images from a recent shooting with my photo model Stephanie. That is kind of the game plan for this video. The Hasselblad X2D II is really advanced, really superior to its predecessor, the Hasselblad X2D, when it comes to the autofocus system and to features like an embedded joystick here on the rear side of the camera body. That, in my opinion, is a game changer. A lot of people always ask me the question, do I need to upgrade from an X2D to an X2D II? My answer always is the same. If you are mainly in landscape photography or architecture or product photography, no need to necessarily upgrade from the X2D to its successor, the X2D II. But if you are in people photography, if you could use in an efficient way Autofocus Continuous, then this camera is a real game changer, and it also works without any flaws together with the XCD 55mm. The first point I want to make is that in this video I will talk about autofocus only. If you guys want to see a detailed tutorial on manual focus, please drop me a comment and let me know. So far, I heard only people telling me in comments or in direct messages they want to have an autofocus tutorial. But I'm happy to do one on manual focus too, if there is enough interest in the channel community. Now, manual focus on this lens is pretty simple because you just push the focus ring forward away from the camera. Then you get the different scales here. And you can operate the camera in manual focus very easily. You will have magnification and focus peaking as focus aids. And it is straightforward, but there are a bunch of settings in the menu, a few tips and tricks which might be relevant for you. So let me know if you want to see that. Here in this video, it's all about autofocus. I want to start the tutorial by the focus modes. And if we go here and I tap here, then you see focus modes are available as autofocus single, autofocus continuous, and manual focus, which is not in scope for this video. Now, what does autofocus single mean? Autofocus single means I get a focus field. We come to different shapes and forms in the course of the video. I can half press the shutter button. Then this focus field turns from gray into green, and then I found focus. And that is what single autofocus is all about. And on all predecessors of the Hasselblad X2D II, autofocus single was the sole concept. There was no autofocus continuous. Now, autofocus continuous means that autofocus is continuously updating. For instance, if my subject is moving. And we'll come to tracking in the course of the video. I will show this to you so you will see how it works. And whenever you want a tracking feature, let's say Jennifer would move here up and down on the table, you will need autofocus continuous. That is a must-have. And that's why this camera is so much superior to its predecessors, because it's the first camera in the Hasselblad world with a continuous autofocus. Focus in the Hasselblad X2D Mark II has a dedicated menu. Let me show you. If we go in here, you find here focus. And if you tap on that, you basically have two sections here. We have autofocus and then a bunch of settings. And here we have manual focus with a bunch of settings. As I said, not in scope for this video. So we can stick to the first section. And the first function I want to show is reset focus point, which is currently set to never. And let me start by setting it to after exposure, and let me live demonstrate what it means. So here I can focus on Jennifer. I can take a shot. And then I have Jennifer hopefully sharp and in focus. Let's have a look. There she is. Beautiful like always, sharp and in focus. And we also see here the HDR preview, which I have activated, by the way, here under quality. So here for JPEG or HEIF, HDR is activated and the processing happens instantly in the camera. And the preview on the LCD is updating accordingly, as you just saw. Now, if I want to shoot Jennifer and have a bit of a different image composition, let's go here like, so you can still see this, like this. Let's go here. And you see the focus field is now no longer centered. And let me take that shot and watch what happens after I've taken exposure to the focus field. This is the preview. Let's go back into live view. The focus field did a reset to the center of the frame. Let's do this with the other female warrior here. Let's go here. Let's take a shot. You see the focus field is sitting now on the right-hand side of the frame. Focus, take a shot, go out of the preview or review mode, and the focus field is centered back. And that is what happens if in the focus menu, you activate reset focus point after exposure. I never have this on the setting. I always have it on never. Why? Well, because let's say I want to shoot in burst mode my photo model, in this case Jennifer, and I have the image composition in a way like this, for instance, then I will take several shots, and I don't want that always after every shot the focus field automatically is resetting back to the center. I don't want that. If I want to center back the focus field, I can do this via this button, see? And then it goes back. Let's do this again. Focus field on the left-hand side of the frame. I push that button, boom, it goes back to the center. So for me, it's much more convenient to have this with a push of a button than automatically allowing the camera to reset the focus field all the time to the center of the frame after each and every shot. I don't want that. That's why here in the focus menu, I've set the very first setting to never. But if you want it, you can automate it here, and I demonstrated it before. The camera will then always reset the focus field to the center of the frame, but it's not my recommendation. I really like it on never. We have a bunch of other functions in that menu. Let's go back to focus. We have autofocus result sound, and you can change this here into different settings. I have this on low. What it actually does is simple. It confirms that autofocus has locked on the subject. That's the usual beep as autofocus confirmation. You know from kind of any camera brand. If you don't need it, you can switch it off. For instance, if you are taking photos in a silent environment. And then we have here also the autofocus assist light. That is a well-known function which illuminates a little bit and helps the scene in front of the camera. And to arbitrary tracking and tracking scope, we come after I introduced a couple of more functions and features. Now, if we are here on the control screen, I showed you already how to toggle between autofocus single and autofocus continuous, where the autofocus is permanently updated as long as you have pressed the shutter button. The other very essential menu here is here. And here we have two parts. We have the focus point. I spoke about different forms and shapes of the focus field before. And we have subject detection, which means that the camera will, based on AI trained algorithms, detect, for instance, that here we have a human being and a human face. And these are the two essential sections we have here, focus point and subject detection. By the way, this menu here, where we have two sections, focus point and subject detection, is completely independent from the menu where we toggle between autofocus single, autofocus continuous, and manual focus. If I go here to autofocus continuous, I have exactly the same options here. See, we have spot, expand spot, custom and wide under focus points, and we have subject detection off, or we can hunt for vehicles, cats, dogs, and human beings. And if I go back here, I have this under AFC in exactly the same way as under AFS, you see? So that is independent, and for each and every autofocus mode, you can choose here whatever you need for your shooting situation. Let's start to discuss focus point equal to spot and how to actually move the focus field. And if I go back into live view, the easiest way to move the focus field is by touch autofocus, but that is not working here. And the reason is you have to enable it. And I want to quickly show you how this works. So you go here into the menu, then you go to focus. And I said before, we have two sections here, an autofocus section, then we have here a manual focus section. But then at the very bottom, you find here touch to move autofocus point and move autofocus point also for EVF. That one I never use, don't want to go into it, but touch to move autofocus point can be activated here. And now I can basically tap wherever I want and the focus field will follow my finger and the tap. You see that? I can place it wherever I want. I can also continuously move it here with my thumb, for instance. It will always follow the touch where it's detected, and I can send that back, of course, with that button here. I deactivate this all the time, but if you are shooting a lot with LCD display, maybe even by tilting it and having it on waist level, then this might be an option for you, because then it's very easy to focus wherever you want by just moving your finger around. So I want to deactivate this because this is not my workflow, not the way I actually operate the camera. Going down here, and touch to move autofocus point gets deactivated again. The second way, which is the most intuitive in my opinion, and is now also enabled here based on the joystick, is using just the joystick. Look here. This is very intuitive. You can move your focus field here wherever you want, upwards, downwards, left-hand side, and upwards again, and right-hand side, and so on, and then centering it back with a push on the X button here. That is the most intuitive way to do it. You can also use the rear control wheel and the front control wheel if you want, but you have to enable it. And I show you this quickly in the menu. We go here to custom buttons, and then you see we have a front wheel click and a front custom button. And the front wheel click I will now set here to move autofocus point. And then the following happens. If I click it, I just push it here with my pointing finger into the camera body. Little arrows will appear, and then I can move this with this control wheel here on the rear side upwards. And I can move it here with the front control wheel sidewards. I find this a bit less intuitive than using the joystick. That function was already there on the Hasselblad X2D, and I kind of hated it. I really love to have a joystick here. And by the way, even if the arrows are there, you can still center it back and the arrows remain, and then you can continue moving it. But it's not a function I typically use, so I will remove it from that click function here on the front control wheel in a moment. If you've chosen spot under focus point, there is a big difference to Leica cameras, and a lot of you are also Leica shooters. So let me quickly point out. Spot really has a fixed size. Let's center it back. You cannot change the size of that square. It will be the most precise way to measure focus somewhere in the scene, and it has a fixed size. You cannot tap and hold like on Leica cameras and then use the rear control wheel to actually expand it into a larger or smaller size. It's always this size. If you want to make spot a bit smarter, you can actually choose expand spot. And expand spot now expands the area around that square. Have a look here. You see these four corners, and within these four corners, if focus cannot be found precisely in the inner square, it expands to try to find focus within these four corners. Have a look here how this is reacting. And you see it's activating different areas. They all have the same size as the original spot. And in this way, you make the spot focus field a bit smarter. Very simple, very effective, and in many situations also very helpful to find focus. If you want to choose the size of your focus field yourself, you have to go to the third option. So we go here to custom, and let's activate this. Let's go in here. And now we can actually have here a focus field which is much bigger, and you see a lot of focus fields, smaller ones, in the same size as the original spot, becoming active here and trying to find focus on Jennifer's body. That is actually pretty cool. Look at that. Let's go here. And also the other person here is recognized. But you don't really have precise control in the same way as if you would be on spot. Of course, you can move this field here around in the same way as I did before with the joystick, with touch functionality if you have activated it, or via the rear control wheel and the front control wheel if you want to use that function. You can center it back. Let me go here to the left-hand side by a push on the X button. And that is very consistent the way it works to move the field between spot, expand spot, and custom. Now, the exciting question, of course, is how can we resize this? And since it's called, if we go back here, it's called custom focus point. There should be a way to size this, make it smaller, make it bigger, stretch it in one or the other dimension. And I will offer you two ways how to do this. And by the way, everything I'm showing you here is basically my workflow, the way I do things on the camera. Maybe sometimes there is an alternative way to achieve the same goal. And then if you know it, please share it in the comments, drop a comment, let other people know what your approach is to solve that particular problem. So the problem we want to solve is here, how do we size this field in the two dimensions, horizontally and vertically? And I show you two ways. One is an inconvenient way, in my opinion, but I want to show it for the sake of completeness. The other one is, again, my way, how I do it. And the inconvenient way is via that option I showed you before under focus. If we go here in focus to the very bottom and activate touch to move autofocus point, I can resize this field via my fingers. Watch here. Now I make it smaller. Now I make it bigger. And I can also precisely do this horizontally and vertically in different sizes. And doing this via pinch to zoom, for instance, is for me inconvenient because, first of all, I don't think this is super precise. I would like to steer this via the front control wheel and the rear control wheel. And second, I don't want to have this activated here. And I mentioned before, I want to have touch to move autofocus point deactivated. So how can you do it differently? Well, my approach is the following. I've set up these functions, which you get here. Let's go back. If we go here, we have, again, these famous two sections, focus point and subject detection. I've set this up on a customized button here. And now I can control with the rear control wheel here my focus field. So you see here is spot. Here is expand spot, here is custom, and with the front control wheel, I can steer whether I have detection off or on cars, animals, or human beings. And the thing is, the moment in time I push that button and I now confirm, I get here these arrows. And now I can use the rear control wheel to size it in the vertical direction and my front control wheel to size it in the horizontal direction, you see here. And that is much more precise than using pinch to zoom and having my fingers messing around on the LCD display. And it also stays in that way. So let's make it smaller. Let's also make it asymmetrically smaller here for a human body, for instance. And then I half press the shutter button. And now this is my new custom focus field. Look at that. And of course, it also can focus on Jennifer and on her friend here. No problem at all. And what I also want to show you is, if I now go back into a different focus mode here, into, let's say I go back here to spot. And now I have my spot field, which is fixed size. And I go again back to my custom mode here. It will remember where I was before. It still offers me the arrows, but if I don't want to resize, it's the size I dialed in before. That is very convenient. Let's quickly test if it also remembers that when I switch off the camera. switch it off. And then let's switch it on. And let's see if this size is still dialed in. Booting up the camera. And here we go. It's still there. You see, the camera remembers that. As long as I don't change it by going again into here and confirming and then using the front and rear control wheel to resize it, it will stay in that form and shape and help me to focus within that area. That is very convenient, right? I think this is a good takeaway for all of you who want to use that feature. A moment ago, I showed you that I have this function, which in the menu is here, where we see focus point and subject detection on a customizable function button in live view. And that is very important, because if you come from here to custom and you go back into live view, you don't get the arrows. You cannot resize it. I can only resize it if I choose this function in live view. That's explicitly in the manual of the Hasselblad X2D II. So I really need to go in live view and choose it, confirm it, then I get the arrows. So how do I get this on a customizable function button? For those of you who have not seen all of my Hasselblad X2D II tutorials, I will quickly show you how this works. You go into the menu, and in the menu, you go to custom buttons. And in custom buttons, you have different views of the camera. And the one we need is on the rear side. That is here. And it is the rear custom button. And you see here from a bunch of functions, I have actually selected focus point subject detection. And that is the function which is here on the button. If I push it, you see I can select the focus point and the subject detection. And that's the way it is called. So you go into the menu, you go to custom buttons, and in custom buttons, you swipe until you come to the rear view of the camera. And then the rear custom button, which is this fellow here, is under focus point subject detection. Just for the sake of completeness and to help you if you struggle to set this up yourself. Now the last option here under focus point we have, if we go back into the control screen, is of course white. And we can choose this here. By the way, here I can also tap it. I have only deactivated touch for the focus point movements on the live view. And in white, it's basically the whole area which is trying to find a subject. And you see, if you have the aperture wide open, here it's widest open at f2.5. That's the widest open aperture setting on the XCD55. Then you actually see that it is detecting Jennifer, but it doesn't detect the other fellow here. Well, if I move the camera a little bit, it becomes random. You see, now it's detecting Jennifer. If I go more here, and basically get the camera in a different direction, it detects the friend of Jennifer. So that is not a way I would love to steer where my focus points and focus fields are sitting. And there are better ways to do that. I'm going to show you in a moment. And now it's even trying to find the background, but now it's back on Jennifer. Look at that. It's a bit random, it's a bit arbitrary, and you kind of have not the right control around that. And there are better ways to do that. But it has its moments. For instance, if we would have only Jennifer here, let's move the camera a little bit, it will always hop to the one subject which is in the foreground. You see that? And for some situations, this might be a function you will adopt. For me, I hardly use it. White is just too much away from the control freak attitude I have in my mind when we talk about where a focus field is sitting. Let's now look into subject detection, and let's use that customized function button to access the function. That is more convenient than always going into the menu. I'm here as a starting position for this section of the video on expand spot and subject detection off. So we can use that customized function button. And now I can, by the way, I can steer the left-hand side via the rear control wheel. You see the focus point setting. And I can steer the right-hand side via the front control wheel. Look here. Here can I go to human beings, cats and dogs, vehicles, and off. But I can also do this all with the joystick. If I press the joystick once, I can steer here on the left-hand side. If I press it to the right-hand side, I can steer here my subject detection and the category of subjects I want to detect. Let's go to human beings and let's see what happens. You see the moment in time I have human beings activated, Jennifer's face is detected. And if I half press the shutter button, I can focus, take a shot. And it's simple like that. Now, what if I want to go over to her fellow here? I can move the camera and watch now. The moment in time this expand spot touches on her body, the face will be recognized. Look here. Boom. You see that? Half pressing the shutter button, it will be sharpened in focus. Going back to Jennifer. Boom. Face detected. Half pressing the shutter button, sharp and in focus. Of course, I can also move the focus field and keep my image composition in this way, having Jennifer in the center. You see the moment in time it touches. Here I'm going away. No face detected on the right-hand side person. Going a bit closer, touching on her with the expand spot, and boom, her face is recognized. So that is very nice. It's bound to the focus field. If I move the focus field here to the left-hand side, it will focus on the background. Watch this, and nothing will be detected. But if I get my focus field close to Jennifer, boom, her face will be detected. On the other person, boom, detected and sharp. So that's how it works with expand spot. The same way it works with spot. And here all of a sudden, I mentioned before, the white setting here is not super useful for me. But in subject detection mode, it becomes all of a sudden very, very useful. And by the way, I can also toggle between different subjects in the scene. So let's choose this here. You see now Jennifer is recognized, but on the right-hand side of the focus field here, you see an arrow. And if I want to half press the shutter button, I can focus on Jennifer's field. But if I use the joystick here and press it to the right-hand side, it jumps to the face of the other person. Now I can get here sharpness and focus on the face, jumping back, joystick in the right direction. Boom, it's back on Jennifer. Here it's back on her. Here it's back on Jennifer. So I can, in the same way as I showed in many tutorials for Leica SL3 and Leica Q3 cameras, easily and conveniently switch between different subjects in the scene. And here all of a sudden, it's no longer erratic. It's no longer at random where it's focusing. You saw before when I used the white setting here, this one here, it was kind of looking for something to detect in the scene and then decided where to focus, which might not be the subject I want to focus on. But with subject detection, this all of a sudden becomes a very cool feature because it automatically detects the face. And if I want to have another face, I just toggle. And then I have the other face and toggling back. So this is pretty nicely implemented by Hasselblad. I think it works like a charm. And now we finally come to the big difference between the Hasselblad X2D Mark II and all of its predecessors. Namely, the question, what happens if Jennifer now moves in the scene? And for people photography, this is absolutely essential that the camera is able to track. And the Hasselblad X2D Mark II, for the very first time in the Hasselblad X system, can track subjects combined with human detection. And in this case, it's Jennifer's face. And in order to activate this, I need now to switch from autofocus single into continuous autofocus. And now when her face is detected, as long as I keep half pressing the shutter button, Jennifer's face will be tracked in three-dimensional space. Have a look. I try to do this here. And now if I move Jennifer here, the focus field will remain sticky on her face. And this is very reliable. I'll show you later live images from my shooting with Stephanie, how the autofocus system has performed. Absolutely brilliant. It's something we've not seen on Hasselblad X cameras in the past. And by the way, if I toggle now the focus field to her friend here and do the same exercise, we'll see that this works in the same way. Now I've switched faces of my detected subjects in the scene. And if I move her, the focus field will be sticky on her in the same way as it used to be on Jennifer's face before, and will ignore Jennifer, just track her face. Look at that. How amazing is that? I'm absolutely excited about that feature, which finally found its way into the Hasselblad X2D Mark II. And I want to show you how this is even not getting irritated by something getting into the way. So currently the focus field is sitting on Jennifer's friend's face here. And I want to toggle now back to Jennifer's face by pushing the joystick to the left-hand side. You see her face is found. Here it's on her friend. Here it's on Jennifer. So let's get her sharper in focus. And I want to now track her and will move her behind her friend, and the focus field will still try to find her. Have a look here. I try to do this. Look at that. This is so reliable. I had for the very first time no trouble shooting Stephanie in my photo model shooting with her, because her face was always tracked and it's always sharp and in focus. And here I'm at the widest open aperture setting. This is phenomenal. I'm so excited what Hasselblad finally produced here. It took them years to get this done, and finally we have it on the Hasselblad X2D II. And that's the big advantage. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you don't necessarily need to upgrade from an X2D to an X2D II. But if you are in people photography, if this is part of your business, the X2D II will make your life so much easier by this tracking feature and subject detection feature. Now, what I just demonstrated with Jennifer and her friend for human subject detection here works in the same way for cats and dogs and for vehicles. And the question is, how does it work for something which is not in this category? So if we don't talk about humans or animals or vehicles, if we talk about something abstract, let's say a cube, how does it work? And for this, Hasselblad has implemented what they call the arbitrary tracking. And I'm going to show you this now in a live demonstration, because that is your way out if the subject you want to track is not in this list of 3 categories: humans, cats and dogs, and vehicles. Okay, let me illustrate this to you. So here in the background, right at Jennifer's half body, you find something important for Swiss people, and it's flavored salt. The name is Aromat, and you know, it's something which some Swiss people even have in a small pocket-size container in their handbags, because they refuse to go out for dinner or for lunch without flavoring with this special salt their meals. And I'm also totally addicted to that flavored salt. Aromat is the Swiss name. And for those of you who live in Switzerland, you will know what I'm talking about. And let's say we want to now focus on this subject and want to track it. And currently the focus is on the face of Jennifer's friend. And in order to activate arbitrary tracking of subjects which are not part of these 3 categories, humans, humans, animals, and vehicles, you have to do a couple of activations in the menu. And the first one is we take subject detection off. And now we have just the focus field we selected before, but we need to go here on this side now to expand spot. And we move expand spot here to this flavored salt container, focus on it. And now we go into the menu, and in the menu under focus, if we go into that, we find here arbitrary tracking. And you see it already warns you this is only applicable to expand spots in AFC mode. AFC we already activated. Let's check this. We have AFC here. And now we need to activate arbitrary tracking. So we go back here into focus, and then we say arbitrary tracking is activated. And now watch how this is tracking my Aromat flavored salt in a 3-dimensional space if I keep halfway pressing the shutter button. Let's find focus. Look at that. No matter where my Aromat is going, it's always tracked, and it's not getting irritated by something else. It's locking onto that subject. That's a wonderful feature you can use if you are not in one of these 3 categories, namely humans, animals, and vehicles. All right, let's remove the spicy Aromat. It's wonderful. If you ever make it to Switzerland, try this out. You will never eat your meat without it again. As I said, there are pocket-sized little containers which people have with them no matter where they go abroad, in Switzerland, no matter where, they always have their flavored salt with them. We are almost there. One more caveat I want to mention, and that is that AFC is not supported if you are an electronic shutter. So let's go here to the focusing mode. You see I can toggle AF single, AF continuous, manual focus, everything is possible here. But the moment in time I switch to electronic shutter, and that is here under exposure. And if I switch it on and go back into the control screen, you will see that my autofocus mode switched from continuous to single. Have a look. It's automatically there. Here you see autofocus single and autofocus continuous is grayed out. The moment in time I deactivate the electronic shutter, I will be back on stage for all the functions and features I showed to you, and can easily switch to autofocus continuous to get the tracking on subjects working. And I think that's basically it. What I want to show you now are sample images I shot with my photo model Stephanie. I want to show them to you as proof of evidence that this is really working. I'm blown away by these autofocus continuous and tracking features of the Hasselblad X2D II. And very likely Hasselblad will continue to improve this with AI-based trained algorithms in the future. But what they delivered here with the market introduction of this new Hasselblad X camera is absolutely breathtaking. And for the very first time, we can actually do people photography without any flaws. So let me show you these sample images, and then I want to quickly conclude the video. All right, I want to keep this short, but what we basically did was letting Stephanie walking in Zurich. And she was typically walking towards me, towards the camera. And I was in autofocus continuous, of course, in human subject detection in the way I showed you before in the video. And I was also in burst mode, so continuous shooting on drive mode. And I was firing as much as I could. And from time to time later in post, I saw some images were not really sharp, kind of missed the focus, but the majority actually is sharp. And with a Hasselblad X2D, so the predecessor of the Mark II, this would have had no chance because without continuous autofocus, you can basically not get sharp images of a face of a human being walking towards you. And here it worked very well. And I want to show you a few of these images. Nothing special, as I said, just Stephanie walking towards me and me taking pictures. And this is the first one. You see she's walking here. Very sharp, very clear, very clean, and this is widest open at f2.8. The lens I was using was my most famous XCD lens of all times, the 35-100E, because so I could also play a little bit with focal length. And this image is flawless, you know. She was walking, moving towards me. The camera did catch her in a very nice way. And here she's approaching me. You see, sharp, clean. Next one, even closer to the camera, sharp. Still sharp here, look at that, and so on and so on. And that was basically the exercise. And I really like the images. I think the Hasselblad X2D II, as a side remark, is a beautiful camera for people photography. And now with these autofocus features, it works really well. Stephanie here was looking a bit more friendly. That's good. And I think this is a mission I would have not accomplished with the Hasselblad X2D. Having Stephanie in this sequence of steps towards me and the camera, continuously getting sharp results in the face and on the eyes. Another series here where she was walking. Let's have a look. Sharp, sharp here. Look at that. Sharp. And generally, again, good results. And for me, proof of evidence that it works. Look here at this eye here. It was really, really sharp. And proof of evidence and basically confirmation that this autofocus continuous concept, which I showed, of course, in the studio only with Jennifer, her friend, and my flavored salt, Aromat, that this also works in real life. And you can use it in people photography, which is quite nice. Here she was walking next to the tram. And again, look at the face. This is sharp, you know. With an X2D, almost impossible to achieve. and very, very tedious doing people photography with an X2D without that autofocus continuous feature. I was doing it in the past a lot actually, and you just arrange, you know, with the situation. But now, since I'm used to the X2D Mark II for people photography, I would never ever return to the Hasselblad X2D. As good as the camera is for landscape, architecture, product photography, everything where you have no moving subjects in the scene, of course. Same story here. Let's see. Sharp, sharp, getting closer to me. Sharp, really sharp. Well done. Here the same sun on her face and getting her eyes to be a bit glowing here. Coming closer to me. Look at that. This is always sharp and in focus. No problem at all with this new autofocus continuous feature. And that's basically all I wanted to show you. We tested it. We did a totally different shooting about a totally different lens, which I'm going to post in the next weeks on the channel. Something really exciting, very vintage, I would say. But I also had my XCD35-200E on the X2D Mark II in order to test this out a little bit. How do I get results? How sharp is it if I let Stephanie walk towards the camera? All right, that's all I wanted to say and show. If you ask yourself what that tripod here is on the table, I have a video on that device on my channel. I'm happy to post a link down below in the info box. And by the way, if you like these type of tutorials, if this is useful for you, if you learn something from it or enjoy it, and you're not a subscriber, please do me a favor and subscribe and support my work. If you liked it, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There's always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy. And of course, peace out.